The best relationships aren't the ones where nobody argues. They're not the ones where there is no conflict and no disputes. The best relationships, the ones that last, are the ones that fall apart and put themselves back together over and over again. And I get it. I get your frustration. You thought that love was supposed to be easier than this because you scroll past the perfect Insta quotes that say, if it's really real, it would be easy. If you're with the right person, the connection would just flow. And then here you are, you meet a real person, having a very real relationship, and guess what? It's not flowing. Or even worse, it flows for a little bit, and then it crashes and burns. Then it flows a little bit more, gets back up, looks great, you feel great, you think this is on the right track now, and then it crashes and burns again. And you start to wonder, maybe it's me. If I'd picked right, if I'd picked the right person, it would just flow, right? Maybe I've made a mistake and I just need to find the right person. But guess what? There is no such thing. There is no perfect person, perfect place, perfect number of children, perfect house that will save you from the cycle of all normal and healthy relationships, which psychologists call rupture and repair, or conflict and repair, or chaos and repair, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. Everything breaks apart and then we put it back together over and over again. The truth is, everything of real value happens in relationships behind closed doors. When the party's over, when the suit comes off, the makeup, the jewelry, everything comes off, and we're just us, raw, a little too plain, a little too boring, a little too needy, a little too unappetizing to each other. Everything you see outside of that is just the highlight reels. But behind closed doors, we're all dealing with the same doubts, same fears. Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. And around here, we're not pretending that relationships are perfect, because we know that we come with a whole slew of baggage, with triggers, past wounds, past experiences that have marked us, that have changed the way we relate to other people. So here we talk about what it really takes behind closed doors to build real and lasting relationships. So let's just let that fantasy go. Let's let the fantasy go of that perfect, quiet, tame and polite relationship go, where we don't have real needs, we don't demand too much, we don't give too little, we're on our best behavior and everything just flows smoothly. Because I promise you, the real magic, it's not in that fantasy. The real magic happens when we let all of that romantic fantasy go and we start living in what really is in front of us. Today we're going to talk about why conflict doesn't mean disaster, why it doesn't have to mean the end of love, or that you've chosen wrong, or that if you just choose the right person, everything will be so much better. And let's talk about the fact that the strongest relationships, the ones that really last, are the ones that are built in the moments that seem the most precarious, the most fragile, when everything breaks apart and we feel like there is no way to fix things. So today, let me walk you through what real repair looks like, so that when the hard moments come, and they definitely will, you don't just fumble through them, because being afraid of conflict means that you put conflict up on this pedestal, and there it holds all the power over you. And it looms over you and keeps you living in fear of asking for what you want, of saying what's really on your mind, of giving the other person the complaint, the opinion that you should be giving. I want you to be able to use these difficult moments to grow even closer to your partner instead of growing apart. Because I know that's what you really want. I know that you clicked on this video because you want to get to a good, solid relationship where you're not afraid of conflict. I want you to understand that the real, raw, and powerful beast that is your relationship, with all of its imperfections, is exactly the way it should be. Because I know that in recognizing that, there is real peace, and I want you to see exactly that today.
Wait, did you subscribe yet? I have a lot more to share and I'd love to have you here for it. It really helps my channel grow and I appreciate it so much.
Conflict is not the universe's way of telling you that you're with the wrong person. Conflict just means that you're two human beings. You've come into the situation with your own triggers, your own fears, your own life experiences, and now you're trying to do your best to love each other the best way you know how. That doesn't mean you have the tools necessary to love each other, but it also doesn't mean you're in the wrong place. Because guess what? There is no right place. The right place is where you're showing up and you're doing your best to connect to the other person. Most of us come into love with all kinds of ideas and of ideals of what exactly love should look like. If my partner really loved me, he should do this or she should do this. If they really cared about me and it was real love and not just pretense, not just infatuation, if they truly loved me, they should do this, they should behave like this, they should be this particular kind of person. Because we have all these expectations, not just our own values for how we want things to happen, but expectations of what the other person should behave like if they really truly loved us. And we don't go around admitting that these expectations are getting in our way, but they are. And it's this romanticized notion that if we just choose the right partner, we have the right amount of children, we have the right type of house, we move into the right neighborhood, we put our children into the right schools, then love will go smoothly from the time we take our vows all the way to the end. And if we infuse our love life with the right romantic gestures towards each other, then of course love will stay alive. And then guess what? We get into trouble because it doesn't go that way. And of course, we don't help each other to see things for what they really are, right? We don't help to dispel this idea that we all have. In fact, we encourage it. We post on social media the 1% photos of our life when everything is going great, when we're celebrating, when we have big smiles and big meals and good times together. And we know that other people are living a real life. We just don't get to see what that real life looks like. And that's normal. The expectation is not that we're going to post photos of ourselves arguing over who's going to do the dishes tonight, because it's hard enough to agree ourselves. We don't need to see more of that on social media. But not seeing the bad times makes it so that in our judgment of ourselves, we imagine the worst. We imagine that our arguments are so much worse than other people's arguments. We imagine that our partners are worse. Our behavior is worse. Our arguments are catastrophic compared to our friends' arguments. Our friends are sitting on the sofa peacefully engaged in civil debate, while we're trying not to slam doors and call the cat names. And movies and shows and television in general and social media, they don't help with this either, because everything you see on TV is minimizing the mundaneness of life, the day-to-day activities that we all argue about that cause us strife, and greatly exaggerates the romanticized version of love, where we're falling in love, when we're going out to dinner, when we're flirting, when we're engaging in behavior that is at its best. But real life behind the scenes is the ordinariness of life. Most of it is made up of that. So then it's no wonder that we have all of these mistaken ideas of what love really looks like, because we're flawed humans and we come into love with our own experiences of trauma, of difficulty, of the chaos of our own childhoods. These experiences now flavor every single romantic encounter we have for our entire adult lives. So say you grew up in an imperfect home environment, like most of us did, where you didn't see conflict being resolved. Instead, you saw conflict leading to days upon days of silence, or it led to emotional or even physical violence. If you grew up in a home like that, then even the whiff of conflict can now seem like a catastrophe waiting to happen, because you don't actually know what follows after conflict. Your nervous system doesn't know what it feels like to get to the repair phase. You don't know the relief and the pleasure that comes out of resolving conflict and getting to the other side, where it propels you into growth, into pushing ahead in your relationship. You don't know what that feels like. You don't know what it looks like. So conflict to you just means a lot of hurt. So you try not to engage in it. You shut down instead of participating. And you cling as hard as you can to this idea that if your relationship was good and proper and it was the right relationship, then of course it wouldn't be leading to this kind of aggravation. Because only stupid people are arguing over who's leaving the toothpaste tube open, right? Only stupid people are stupid enough to argue about the mundaneness of the everyday experience that we just cannot agree on. So because conflict to you means that you now have to brace for the relationship to come to its natural end, because that's what you're expecting, you just don't engage. You try to stay as far away from conflict as possible, But I'm here to tell you that you're actually doing yourself a disservice by not engaging in any kind of disagreements, because the real secret isn't in avoiding conflict. The real secret is learning how to repair it. The real secret is in coming back together when things are difficult, especially when it's hard. Because if you've ever had light, casual relationships where you spend a few weeks or a few months going out on dates, having good times, enjoying each other's company, you know that unless you get to the hard stuff, real depth and connection doesn't come, because that deep connection is not built in easy times. Easy times come and go. It's when you actually start to engage in really revealing yourselves to each other, on cutting your teeth on each other in a way. That's when deep connection starts to build. That's when you go from the flirtatious, we're just getting to know each other phase to an actual real relationship. That's the transition. The transition is conflict. Deep trust and connection is built when things break and you stay. It's built when you see your partner for what they are, underneath their social mask, underneath the illusions of what they could be, what they should be to please you, to show their love for you. Deep connection is built underneath all that. When you see each other in your real and honest behavior, which, let's be honest, it's not going to be great. Not theirs and not yours. But real trust is built in these difficult moments. When you see each other for what you really are and you say, yeah, this sucks. It sucks seeing you like this, and it sucks having to reveal myself to you and be seen in this way. But that's what binds people together. Because in conflict, what we do is we reveal ourselves not just to each other, but we reveal ourselves to ourselves. And we want more of that. We want to see ourselves for what we really are. We don't really know it, but that's the part that's interesting. That's the compelling part about being with another human in deep, intimate, emotional contact. It's that we get to know ourselves as we get to know the other person. And we want more of that. We stay for that. We want to see the real us through the eyes of another person who accepts us with our inconsistencies, with our flaws, with our bad moods, with our inability to be on time for anything, with all the flaws that we come with. We want to see ourselves for what we are and be accepted. And we can only do that when we let ourselves be seen. And yeah, that leads to some conflict, but it leads to amazing things too. Because if we make it and we get to the other side, we start to see that we can be accepted for our most unlovable and unredeemable bits. And it's hard to leave that once we have it. So repair isn't pretending that conflict is not happening. It's not brushing everything under a rug and pretending that we don't have to discuss anything because it might be painful. And it's also not one person taking on the emotional burden of learning how to manage conflict, of learning how to peacefully argue and kindly negotiate in a relationship. And please understand, when we say conflict, we're not talking about abuse of any sort, or either physical or emotional abuse. Those kinds of things are in a category of their own, and they are perfectly legitimate reasons to leave relationships. We mean the run-of-the-mill kind of conflict about who's going to wash the dishes tomorrow, and my mother-in-law said that thing at the party and I really don't like it. The kind of conflict that doesn't go away, that just keeps on coming back. The first big rupture or conflict in a relationship matters more than we think. Not because conflict is rare, but because it marks a boundary. It marks a demarcation between the time when everything was peaceful and perfect and we were in our perfect behavior, and the reality of what it takes to have an actual relationship where we get deeper, we get more connected, we become a real thing together. So it marks a boundary, and how you both move together to the other side of that boundary is going to say a lot about how you're going to continue having a relationship. Because after the first big conflict, you learn things about each other. You learn, can we turn towards each other in the middle of this agreement, or do we turn outwards, away from each other? Can we navigate this problem that we're facing here without making it a power struggle between us? Can we navigate it with the vision that we are resolving something together rather than two people on opposite ends of a debate trying to win And can we find a way back to each other after the conflict, or do we keep drifting apart? Because that first conflict really marks the division between the land of hopes and dreams, that is where we're living at the beginning of a relationship, and the island of disappointments and delusions that we have to naturally gravitate towards if we're going to have a real relationship. Where we see reality for what it is. It doesn't have to be tragic, it doesn't have to be incredible, it just has to be good enough. And we either accept it gracefully and learn how to work with it, or it destroys us. And we don't have to accept it gladly, enthusiastically. We have to accept it as gracefully as we can, because again, we are flawed humans, both of us, not just our partners. So that first crash, it either builds trust between us or it puts fear into the relationship. That's an important fork in the road. So don't be afraid of conflict. Spend your time rather learning how to manage conflict in peaceful, kind ways so that you can love each other through the conflict and onwards to the other side of it. Especially if you grew up not seeing what real repair in a relationship looks like. If you've always had the idea that arguments and disagreements lead to the end of a relationship. Because if you get stuck in that idea, then you never get to where you really want to go. And that's a solid, really intertwined relationship where you have real trust and longevity. Because you're not going to get that from relationships where you don't discuss anything, where you don't argue about anything, because you think that's what's going to keep the peace. You're just not going to get there. Real safety and security in love doesn't come from avoiding conflict. In fact, it makes things worse, because what it does is it pushes all of the issues in the relationship down to the sub-basement, where the resentments breed and grow into powerful things that one day will be too difficult to contend with and too late to resolve. I know you're afraid of conflict, and you should be if you care about the other person, because in conflict, you really see each other. And that's a powerful thing to be afraid of. Because when someone can see you, they can also leave you. They can choose to walk away. And that takes some degree of risk on your part and on your partner's part. But without that, you don't get to the other side of a real honest relationship. There is no way there that doesn't include some degree of conflict. So the real safety comes from knowing that you can engage in disputes, in disagreements, and come out on the other side and find each other again there. Having that experience will make you even more confident because you know what will be on the other side of it. Real love is not clean, it's messy. And the faster you accept this, the better you fare in good and long-lasting relationships, in marriages, even in long friendships. And the more opportunity you give yourself to learn how to fight fairly and with decency, which will help a lot. So that you can resolve your differences, as well as can be expected. Not perfectly, but as well as can be expected. And that's good enough. Love, the day-to-day reality of what it takes to sustain a relationship, is messy. It's raw, and it's marked by cycles of things falling apart and being put back together. And that is normal. And every time you stay through the hard parts, you build something stronger than romantic perfection. You build real, genuine love.